If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that you're a hunter or you just enjoy the great outdoors. Now's the time to step up. There have been countless efforts to vilify hunters, denounce the legitimacy of the science-based wildlife management model. There's no science to this stance, and it is solely emotionally charged. We don't want to see what happened with the grizzly hunt replay itself again with the remaining large carnivores and big game species. It's a slippery slope, folks. We need to stand together. Now is the time for hunters to be united across all organizations and show our combined support. Please go to wildsheepsociety.com/act now and follow the steps. It doesn't take much time and it will help save the future of hunting. This applies to residents and non-residents alike. Please, let's use our voice and be heard. On with the show, folks. This is episode 32 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode of the podcast is a man that doesn't need an introduction, Jim Shockey. This podcast is brought to you by Kafaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet, bar none. Frontiersman gear, high quality, completely custom, handmade knives made in the heart of the Peace Country. And as always, we're brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop. So last night I'm at our kind of bar nook there going over my notes, and my wife was kind of reading them beside me, and she's kind of muttering to herself. She's like, all-American swimmer, world-class water polo player, foremost expert on folk art in Western Canada, retired, honorary lieutenant colonel, guide and outfitter. You've won multiple awards for the TV show. You opened a museum in 2019. She's like, who the heck is this guy? Are you interviewing the most interesting man in the world? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I've always thought you get one life to live, so you might as well live at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, no kidding. I love the way that you show people the story of hunting, not just the kill. I think it's something that's really important to us here, and to actually show the adventure, cultures, and experiences. I think it's particularly relevant today in the current place hunters have found themselves in through social media. You're a great example, and I'd love to discuss your story and your kind of ethos around hunting. So you started hunting as a young man in Saskatchewan, is that right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as young as you're allowed.
Yeah. I think I read you took your first deer at like 13.
14. It wasn't legal until you were 14 in Saskatchewan, back in those days.
And you kind of went off on your own when you turned like 18?
17, went to university out in Simon Fraser University in Vancouver.
Nice. So your kind of first solo hunt was over here in BC?
Yeah. I mean, not quite, because I was I did 2 years here and then 2 years, and I did not go hunting in those 2 years in BC. Then I went 2 years in Carleton University in Ottawa. And that would have been when I started, solo hunting in Ontario. But when I came back here to BC after that, after my 4-year university, that's when I got serious about the hunting.
Nice. So when after that did you get into the mountains? Because from watching your shows and everything, you're quite the mountain man.
Definitely not nowadays. A pale shell of what I used to be able to do. 63 years old now. So, I can still get up and down a mountain, but not, you can't do it like you could when you're 38, so it's, but I would have been 21 when I came back to BC, and that would have been my first solo mountain trip back in the day. Cool.
And what kind of species were you chasing?
You broke up a little bit, but I think you asked what mountain species I.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that was mountain goat up near the village of Iskut, I believe.
Cool. Yeah, I'm leaving on my first mountain goat hunt this August.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's mountain goat hunting is fantastic. I mean, it's just a really underrated animal.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems that way. It seems like one that a lot of people skip over. They go straight to sheep, right?
Yeah. Sheep have the, the cachet and they're certainly promoted, but the capra species of the world are harder to hunt for the most part, and in every regard, just as worthy of big game animals.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. The adventure looks like it's there. I can't wait.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's a good hunt.
Yeah, I can't wait. So how did stuff progress from there? You've sort of arranged your life to chase these species and these hunts.
Yeah, I mean, it's who I am. I mean, it's not a pastime or a hobby. I mean, it literally is who I am. Is to head to the remotest parts of the world and see what's over the next mountain ridge, across the next valley, what's out of sight. So it's all been a part of that. And, of course I'm interested in the cultures of those various places and also their art and their history. I mean, that's what hunting's about. The kill is just a tiny little part of it. So I'd say I've organized my life to be able to explore the world to whatever level I was capable of. And then, it takes money to do that. And who knows, when you start out at 21, 22 years of age, whether you're going to have enough money to explore Tajikistan or whether it's, the back valley of the Clopan Valley in BC, who knows? Mm-hmm. Right. But either one of them is worthy, and either one has all the same elements. There's no reason you can't do the same thing I did, except on a more local basis, and still be just as fulfilled and still find it just as interesting. There's lots of places that I had the opportunity to go to, but many more that I did not, that are local that guys around here and ladies that hunt have explored. So, I wish I had 10 lives, then I could have maybe done it all.
Yeah, we talk about it often on this podcast, the amount of opportunity that we have here in BC. We're so lucky. It's I don't know, I don't think there's many other places that you can hunt, whitetail, blacktail, mule deer, elk, moose, just about every kind of sheep, goats, it's crazy.
Yeah, for the North American species, I'm not sure. I think it's 17 of the North American species out of the 30 we can hunt here in BC. I mean, that's incredible. This is the Serengeti. This is the Mecca for North American hunting, for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely cool to live here. That's for sure. So for me, I've sort of cut my teeth hunting elk. Is there a species for you that you kind of cut your teeth on?
I mean, white-tailed deer. I grew up. That was my first big game animal when I was 14, as we talked about earlier. So white-tailed deer were really my focus for a long, long time. That's kind of the ubiquitous species, big game species here in North America. And they're down in Mexico. They're coast to coast, and they're nowadays all the way up to the Yukon. So they're it was white-tailed deer, but moose were. That's what we needed as when we were young to eat meat for the winter. If my dad and my uncles didn't get their moose, we didn't go buy. Well, at least our family, we didn't go buy a cow. I didn't know that was even possible until I was in high school. We ate macaroni and no cheese. So the moose were more important. White-tailed deer were never really considered that important a species for my dad and my uncles because it didn't provide enough meat for our family. For the perfect deer hunt for my father was to go out on opening morning of the deer season, shoot a deer, be done, back at work by 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock, whenever. as soon as he could get back. That was a perfect deer hunt. You don't waste time because there's not enough meat.
Yeah.
A moose, they would take a week and go hunt moose to really ensure that they had a moose for winter for us. So moose were the more important species for food for me, but whitetail deer that was the one that I focused on and tried to learn the most about, all the way through my first 25 years probably of doing the hunting on my own.
Yeah. It sounds like they weren't recreating. They were filling the freezer, right? Back when you were a kid.
Yeah. They, for Dad, it was, we had a very different view of what hunting was about. For me, I always felt there's a spiritual connection to the wildlife and the wild lands. And, it was, there was a measure of respect, for my dad. And again, with all due respect to his view of the world, he grew up in the dirty 30s. They had nothing, zero. So to him, a deer was a hamburger running across a field. That was all it was. And he didn't have the luxury of being able to, elevate that animal to something on a spiritual level and look at hunting as something that was good for the soul. Yeah. Hunting was good for the stomach. And that was, that he carried that for his entire life. Near the end, I think he started letting go of the you have to kill something to eat sort of attitude, and an animal is just food. It's meat that you eat. That was his take. And fair be it. I mean, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon certainly, but I didn't grow up as poor as my father was, and so thank goodness I had the luxury of holding these animals in higher regard. So yeah, my father and I had many discussions about hunting. His, hunt, the perfect hunt, opening morning, first 5 minutes done. My hunt, my perfect hunt, closing day, last 5 minutes of the hunt done. That was the biggest difference between us. I loved the hunt. Yeah. He loved the meat.
Yeah. Yeah. My hunting mentor, Ronnie, pointed out to me that, on your show, the way you would joke around with your dad, yet you'd still show him a lot of respect, was super fun to watch. And he said he thinks that did a lot of things for a lot of different people. In the sense that like he would watch you and your dad joke around with his old man, and then they would inevitably be closer that day when they were, out and about or whatever. So, what's kind of your fondest memory hunting with your old man?
I mean, there's so many. He was there when I, took my first whitetail deer. I was 14 years old. He was there. He so that's hard to, hard to beat that memory. The pride that I felt that I had transitioned from a boy to a man. It's figurative and symbolic and maybe doesn't mean anything to the average urbanite who's sitting there going, really, that's the measure. But for us it was, and it was. I remember it was opening morning, of course, and there were, I don't know, 4 or 5 deer running across a field, and we, all jumped out of the truck and started shooting. I mean, that's the way they hunted. This was meat hunting. Yeah. What was the most effective way? You saw an animal, jumped out and shot it. I mean, there's no skill other than shooting skill. But I remember my 2 uncles shooting, bang, bang at these deer running, and then I shot and one fell, and I couldn't believe it was the buck actually that was in the bunch. And I believe that I didn't even think for a second it was me. I just turned around to my uncle and said, who got him? And they just looked at me like, well, you did, it was your, you got it. And, so that, Dad was there. Dad was right there with for that experience, for that first year. And it was overwhelming. It still is to this day. Yeah. I can't say I'm proud of the style of the hunt, but that was the way of the day. that's what they did. And I embraced it because, that's what my father and my uncles passed on to me. That was the tradition. The hamburger was dead and tagged up and my hunt was over.
Yeah.
So that, that memory with my father, and, it was also probably the first point in my life where I went, well, what did I just do? I'm done on first day.
Yeah.
Waited all year for this. No, all year. I was 14 years old. I was ready to go hunting when I was 8. And I waited, years. And here it was all done in the first 2 or 3 minutes. So it was, bittersweet, but, wonderful memory and probably what set me on the course that I was going to take for the rest of my life in terms of how I viewed hunting. So that, that memory, but again, there's so many. I was there when Dad got his biggest moose when he was 79 years old.
Oh, wow.
Up in the Yukon. It was, fantastic experience. He shot it in one tine on the first shot and, missed, which he never did, but he was getting older by then.
Mm-hmm.
And his second to last moose, which were the two biggest bulls. And I guided him up in the Yukon and our own outfitting territory. Those memories. He was, the hunt with, his last whitetail hunt. He was 84 years old and Eva was there, and he was definitely frail and, didn't have long for this world. That, these are all memories. And walking back to get the truck, with that beautiful sunset, I'd left Evie and her grandfather, my father, together with the deer. And I went to get the truck. And walking back, it was the most gorgeous sunset and knowing that this was my father's last hunt, those are all really poignant memories. And there's none that are better or more important than the others. On a selfish note, I guess the one when I was 14, because, it was about me, but there's, there's so many other memories. That's what hunting is about. One of the big cornerstones of hunting is family, quality time with family. So, there's not 100 memories. There's not 1,000. There's 1 million memories that I'll take with me to the grave.
Yeah. Yeah. Those stories all really speak to me. My dad glassed up the first mule deer that I ever shot. And, I have a similar story, and so that really resonates. Yeah. So you're like a pretty serious storyteller, and the way that you tell your stories is a way that's tasteful. And I really appreciate it. How did you how did you get into the television thing? How did that become the medium for telling your stories?
That was just evolution, really, because I'm old enough that when I started, there really was no hunting television. There was a show. Was it? My brain's getting old now. But 1960s, there was a hunting show, and that was the only one. There was 3 networks way back when.
Yeah.
Kurt Gowdy's show, whatever it was, but American Sportsman, I believe it was. And I didn't know we even got it up here in Canada, but there was no television, no televised hunting shows. What there was magazines. Magazines were the media that we lived through. When I grew up, I read Outdoor Life and Peterson's Hunting, Field and Stream, Sports Afield. I lived for those magazines. When they would come every month to our house, I would pour through it, read the "This Happened to Me" section and in Outdoor Life and dream about it. The great writers of the day, Jack O'Connor and Ruart, these guys were, they were, and there was a magazine called Argosy, which was more about hunting, more more dramatic but it, it captured my imagination. Books, there were, books were another way. J.A. Hunter's book called Hunter. I was reading that in grade 5. I was 10 years old. I mean, the teacher was trying to teach us whatever, see Dick run and Jane up the hill or whatever. And, I was reading J.A. Hunter's book, a Kenyan professional hunter that, was in Africa in the heyday. And I actually got a detention for it. I had to stay after school because I wasn't reading what the teacher wanted us to read. But it was reading. So those stories I grew up reading and understanding, and they were indelibly stamped on my mind. These storytellers, their style. When I kind of reached my age where I could go hunting myself, the storytelling had changed. It had become, the great writers were gone. And I don't want to call the writers of the day not great. They were great for the style of the day.
Yeah.
But the focus of the stories became how to hunt deer in their bedroom, how to pick the right deer caliber, how to, and I remember in 1984, I was reading one of these magazines and just going, this is not what I grew up reading. It's, I was in my 30s and they just didn't inspire. There was no romance to them. Nothing carried me away to this place. And I didn't really want to hear, the 101 best books to use for, so I actually, I was disgusted, and I said to myself, I can do better than this. I would rather read one of my own stories after the old school stories than read this how-to stuff. And so I wrote my first hunting article. It was about bow hunting. I sent it off to Kathleen Windsor, was the editor of a magazine called Bowbender Magazine, published in Alberta. And she bought the story. It was and paid me $42.
Nice.
So that was my first attempt at telling a story. And I kind of had the benefit of growing up in the olden days and right up through, to today. So not that I'm actually grown up yet, but certainly living through that period. This huge transition from print media to suddenly in the late 90s, videos. We started being able to, late 80s actually, we started to get video cameras. And we could video our own children, video our own hunts even.
Yeah.
So what I found, and I probably published 1,000 hunting articles over the years, including a couple of hunting books that were basically just the articles put into book form. But in the late, early 1993, I did my first television show, video television show, VHS or VHF, and it was for ESPN at that time.
Oh, wow.
So ESPN, they had a hunting show. There was only one ESPN network, and Sunday mornings there was a show called North American Hunter, and I was sort of the co-host on an episode, and from there I realized that that's the new storytelling medium. The picture's worth 1,000 words. A 1-minute video clip is worth 100,000 words.
Yeah.
As long as they're put together in the right sequence, and so I started filming my hunts back in the early 90s with the crappy technology we had in those days, and started figuring out how to edit and put them, not the technology side, but the storytelling side.
Yeah.
And I think we produced our first TV show in 2003, so almost 20 years ago, where it was actually, Jim Shockey's Hunting Adventures, but I was on the air co-hosting other shows for, a decade before that.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you can see it in your work. When you say that the romance was or is missing in a lot of the print media, and I mean, quite frankly, a lot of the film stuff that comes out now, it's missing the romance of the old days. I've said that on here before too. Like, I find myself as a 30-something-year-old man, I go to those old 1950s and 60s hunting and guiding and outfitting books, and I'm like, these are just the best. And you capture the same feeling in your show. So, I mean, in your shows rather, they're so enjoyable to watch because you feel like you're in on something, you know.
Well, that's the original goal. Excuse me. When I pitched my Hunting Adventures television show to the network at the time, it was the Outdoor Channel down the States. I was told by virtually everybody that it wouldn't work because the TV shows even in that time were more how-to oriented whitetail deer and turkeys. And they told me that who would want to watch a hunting show that isn't about whitetail deer and turkeys?
Yeah. Because
that's what the majority of people hunt. So they wouldn't want to watch anything except whitetail deer and turkeys. And I begged to differ. I said, no, I think hunters are hunters. And if you present a hunt and tell the story, the narrative, I guess is the popular word nowadays, in a way that hunters can relate to, it wouldn't matter if you're hunting mice or Cape buffalo. It doesn't have to be whitetail deer and turkeys. The hunters are hunters, and they appreciate being brought along on the trip. So, wherever that is for whatever animal, as long as it's about hunting. So like I say, they all predicted doom and gloom for my show that I pitched. And, now whatever, I'm on a year, 2 decades later, and we're still, Hunting Adventures after 17 years on the air, finally closed that show down. And I could have kept it going. There was no reason why we wouldn't keep it going other than, I'm 63 years old, and there comes a point where you can only pretend to be the rough and tough, mountain man, and you become a caricature, as opposed to who you were. So, I consciously chose it to close that TV show down. But I think we proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt that, hunters appreciate hunting. It's about hunting, not about what the animal is, and not about the kill.
Yeah.
It's about, this 99.9% of what hunting's about, other than the kill. The kill is such a tiny part of what it is, and it doesn't matter what species you're after. It matters the family, the adventure, the humor, the culture, and the animals are, just a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
All those in equal portions. So like I say, we've been very fortunate to have sort of lived through that transition, the magazine all the way through to television, and we'll see how long it goes into the future, because everything that we produced is now in reruns and seems to be doing as well as it ever did. We'll see.
Yeah, I have 2 directions I want to go and ask you a couple of things, but one thing I just want to touch on is when I was researching, getting my notes going here, I came into a rabbit hole of your son doing the production work and that kind of stuff, and it seems like you instilled a lot of the same values in him in his storytelling style, which is really cool.
Yeah, our son Bramlin is he's one of the very few true geniuses that I've ever had the privilege of meeting. So I don't know that I instilled in him or he actually took what I was doing and made it better. He it was probably now 12 years ago he was out of university and came to me and he was a hunter when he was younger. He loved hunting, but he came to me at 16 and said, Dad, I love hunting, but if I continue down this path, I will always be in your shadow. Everything I accomplish will be because of you and not, because of my own abilities. So, I want to be involved in this industry because people are wonderful and the lifestyle is healthy. But he said, I'm going to make my own route. So he went into production, and he came to me, like I say, at a much later age or older age, and said, Dad, your hunting adventure show, which, had won every award for outdoor television at that point.
Yeah.
He said, Dad, I can make your show better. And I kind of laughed and said, yeah, how can you make it better? It's already number one. And he said, well, let me try. So he came up with the idea of the Professionals, which in its very first season won the best overall for outdoor television, eclipsed my hunting adventure show. And eventually, after 4 years, morphed into Uncharted, 1 hour program, and then into Uncharted Yukon. So I would like to say that, Brandon learned his storytelling from me and agree with you, but in fact, he is truly the genius behind the storytelling of those productions. I can tell a linear story. Brandon's the one that can turn it into art, and that's what he's done for 12 years. And now that those shows are, we put them to bed, I'll be interested to see what direction he goes in, because now he's free to explore whatever medium, whatever genre he wants. And he's moved down to Kansas City with his family.
Cool.
So I don't know what he's up to now. I honestly don't. He told me that, Dad, this one, he's totally doing on his own, whatever it is. And, so he's going to live and die, and, speaking figuratively, on just on his own ability, period, on this next, whatever project he's working on. Yeah. I'm excited to see it, but I'm also in the dark about it. Brand is, he truly is a gifted genius in so many ways. I wish I had his talent. If I had one fingernail of his talent, I would be insufferable. I would, but he's also a very nice guy. So God chose wisely when God gave that all that talent to one person.
Yeah. He seems like a very cool cat. I would actually love to chat with him and just talk about storytelling a little bit. That'd be awesome. I don't want to keep you too long, Jim. I know you have a lot on your plate, but one thing that I really want to kind of talk to you about, it's just like in the conservation kind of arena here, like there's a lot of I'm trying to think of the right vernacular to use here, but there's a lot of pressure from groups that aren't interested in our way of life. And it seems to me like one of the best things that we can do is tell our story. And like the way that you tell your story, I said earlier, I mean, it's tasteful. It's put together in a beautiful way. I mean, I watch Uncharted Yukon with my daughters, like it's not something offensive, it's awesome. It's family. It's all that stuff. Right. So I guess my specific question I have for you, Jim, is if you could suggest one thing to the hunting community that could kind of help ourselves out in the kind of social media age that we're living in now, what would that be?
Number one, I think we have to remember, and it's easy to forget it because the loud naysayers are so vocal and command attention, but we have to remember that, there's 10% of the population hunts to varying degrees, and, varying, me being the extreme, 1%, probably less than that even, but 10% are hunters, in some way, manner, fashion, or form, there's 10% of us in our society are not hunters at all and are against, the 1%ers being the animal rights fanatics and the other 9% just being, really find hunting distasteful and they probably lean towards being vegans or vegetarians, at least, but really ideologically opposed to humans having any, right to kill an animal of any description. But then in the middle, there's 80% of us. 80% of the people, you walk around in 100 people you see, 10% are going to be hunters or, leaning towards, accepting it. 10% are absolutely against it or leaning towards, really against it. But 80% of those, so 80 people out of that 100 are kind of, what did they read today? Was it about Cecil the lion got killed by some terrible hunter? Well, now they're against hunting. Or was it an article on Field to Table Living where wild game is the best organic meat you can put on your plate? Then they leaning towards hunting. There are 80% of those people are just kind of, they're not sure, and they'll lean this way or they'll lean that way depending on who, as you referenced, tells the story best. Mm-hmm. And also remember that we need to remember that these people, like all of us nowadays, are sick and tired of being fed. I don't want to call it BS, but we're being dragged along and dictated to and fed propaganda, to make money for big media companies. Yeah. The news there's not news anymore.
No.
It's really selling, marketing, whatever sells eyeballs. So bad news sells better than good news. What do we have to say as hunters? We have good news. So does that make it into the press? No, it doesn't. If there's something bad, that makes it in the press because bad news sells for $2, good news sells for $1. So we're up against a serious, I guess, social way that doesn't allow us to tell our story, doesn't give us access to the storytelling mediums nowadays. But going back to my point, 80% of the people out there are kind of, one way or another, they're not buying into the rhetoric necessarily, unless there's really, like I say, the black rhino deal or Cecil or spear killing a bear. They'll jump on all those because that's bad news. But they do want to hear the truth, and we just have a problem getting that truth out to them because we're not allowed to. It doesn't sell newspapers or eyeballs on television.
Yeah.
But we never should lose sight of the fact that 80% is not against us. The loud voices, that 10% that hate hunting, they would have you believe, they would love the 80% to believe that we're all against hunting, but it's not true. You talk to people and you say, hey, I eat the wild game. Most people want to try it.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to try that someday. That's the 80% aren't, they are not owned by the 10% that hate hunting. So now to directly answer your question, that means whatever story we're telling, couch it in a way that those 80% can understand. Yes, you and I know that, there's blood involved with killing something. Mm-hmm. Every butcher knows that. Even people that eat meat and like a rare steak, but they don't see it as blood of a living animal. They see it as just, a steak laying on their plate. There's no life. There was never any death involved. But we understand that as hunters that, life begets death, begets life, begets death, and blood is a part of it. But that 80%, they've never seen blood. So why would you ever post a picture with blood all over an animal? This is telling the story. Why do that? It doesn't serve hunters or hunting well when we tell a story in a way that is only for our 10%. Tell it in a way that always assume whatever you're doing, whatever story you're telling about hunting, that you're actually reaching not just hunters, but the 80% of the population that don't hunt. And, part of them are leaning towards, not liking hunting. So always be respectful of those people's opinions. This isn't a line in the sand. This is a chance for us to reach across, into another ideology and say, hey, here's what we're doing and why. And that's why I've always been heavy on any storytelling that we do on television, even in the articles I wrote all those years, to reference and put hunting in a perspective of what it really is. It's not just about the animal dying. That's a tiny little part of it. It's like I said earlier, it's family, it's adventure, it's culture, it's humor. This is what we do when we're together. So why not tell that story? Yeah. And the animal is just a tiny little part of it. I love looking at birds' nests. If I see a bone on the ground, it's natural history. I see an arrowhead, I find that. And, again, this puts hunting in a cultural perspective that's 10,000 years older, depending 6,000, depending on what your faith. So, again, just my advice is be very aware that in these times, a story told in an inappropriate way for the public can reach everybody nowadays with social media.
Yeah.
So always tell the story in a way that, as if you're talking not just to hunters, but to that 80% that might actually be our friends and our allies on a given day and that we'll need. They're not the enemy. They're just people that would like to understand. So let's tell them in a way that is in words. You should use the words vernacular, in a vernacular that doesn't offend them. And it's not a battle. It's not where, hey, I'm going to show my rights as a hunter. I want my dead picture and my hero shot, and I don't care if the tongue's hanging out because I don't care. Yeah. That's not this. You're fighting the wrong people. Let's be respectful of these other people's higher sensibilities and tell the story in a way that they can appreciate it and actually find themselves on our side in a given situation, like I say, when we need them down the road, and we will. That day is coming. So be respectful when you tell your stories.
I've never heard it put that way, with 10 on each side and then 80 in the middle. I think that's a powerful way to look at it. And I think if a lot of us did a better job framing it that way, we would probably not be in as hot of water as we find ourselves in on a regular basis. That's awesome. I hope everybody listening to this kind of heeds your advice.
Well, it's as hunters nowadays, we have greater responsibilities because our actions can reach so far so quickly. That wasn't the way it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago, during my father's era. Nowadays it is. So things have changed. Our voices are weakened, because we don't have access to the various media, but our voice has also strengthened where it can be heard around the world. One single person here in BC can be heard around the world by, everybody that we're trying to reach with a pro-hunting message.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, that voice, when it does reach around the world, is usually bad news. But, it just means that we have to be constantly vigilant about our messaging and never stop, never apologize. But also, we don't need to be defiant and look at it as a war against that 80%. It's not. It's as I said, you actually have to look pretty hard to find someone who's vehemently against hunting. Yeah. In most, I'm sure if you went down to Hollywood and went to a party or New York City, you'd probably find yourself, amongst non-friends. But the vast majority of North Americans are open to the concept of, especially if you talk to them in terms of organic field to table living.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's our responsibility as hunters. Every one of us nowadays has a greater responsibility to represent hunting and hunters in a positive light.
Yeah, that's great advice, Jim. That's awesome. So I'm pretty well at the end of your time here, so I won't keep you much longer. Is the museum open right now, or is it closed because of all the COVID stuff?
No, we've been open the whole time, other than I think last year about this time they made a shutdown for a couple of months. But
awesome.
It's open. The museum's open 365 days a year, donation only.
Yeah.
And it's 10 till 5 every day. It's truly worth going to see, because everything we've talked about today can be put into a three-dimensional perspective.
Yeah. When
you walk in that museum. The Hand of Man Museum of Natural History, Cultural Arts, and Conservation, and it's the story, but in artifacts, in art, in natural history. Dinosaurs and woolly mammoths, and then mounted animals, but also the cultural, religious artifacts. Ethnocentric art from around the world. It ties it all together into exactly what we're talking about, and it's literally 99.9% positive response. We get one person in 1,000 visitors that is offended. The rest are the comments. Just look online. I mean, you'll see the loud voices are being drowned out by the positive voices. People get it. And certainly, I mean, it's a museum. It's not a hunting museum.
Yeah,
it's a natural history museum with heavy emphasis on cultural arts and conservation. So yeah, we're open. Everybody's welcome. Love to see everybody there.
Yeah. I'll definitely be taking my 3 daughters and my wife over there once the ferries fire back up here. But it looks super cool. I can't wait to check it out. Jim, I truly appreciate having you sharing your stories and kind of sending the right message about hunting out to the masses and kind of giving everybody a gentle nudge in the right direction to kind of be doing the right thing. I truly appreciate the insight, Jim. It's awesome.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me on. Hopefully we help with the ratings on your podcast and get the messaging out there.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Jim. That was awesome. Have a great afternoon.
You betcha. Thanks a lot, Tyler.
Thanks, Jim. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. If you want to support the podcast, please check out the gear on our website at www.wildernesslocals.net.